Hey, this channel and its videos are intended for adults only and not for children. No kids allowed. Hey, welcome to another amazing episode of Mikey's Video Game Madness. Hopefully I said that with enough enthusiasm. Today we are playing Castlevania 2, Belmont's Revenge for the Game Boy on the PlayStation 4. It was originally for the Game Boy, and I used the Game Boy filter just to show you what it would have originally looked like, but I'll actually revert back to what it I'll revert back to like a better image. Sorry. Apparently I do these things when I'm super tired, because why not? So this is part of the Castlevania collection, available on pretty much anything you can play games on that's current. So PC, Switch, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and Konami had any sense, they'd release this physically. Like if they release both of their Castlevania collections, because they have this Castlevania collection and then they have the one with Symphony of the Night and Castlevania Rondo of Blood, Dracula X Rondo of Blood, whatever you want to call it. But this is Castlevania 2. This is way different from the Castlevania 2 on the NES. It's a completely different game. Sorry, I still have that cough. I apologize. So this game's really special to me, and basically it's story time, kids. So yeah, like when I was around 6, we lived in government housing, like apartments. They were really shitty. Like people would be smoking crack and stuff outside, and I was a mischievous but shy kid, and I would wander off, and my parents were like, we got to get out of here. So we eventually found a small modest house outside of the city, and what would be called Chesterfield, which means nothing to any of you, but it's like suburbia. We actually lived behind a skating ring, which was kind of cool if I had money and I was actually cared about skating. The only thing I cared about, like when I would occasionally go, was they had a Ninja Turtles arcade game, which at the time, like the graphics in the arcade were like better than anything you could play at home, and they had it, which intrigued me more for some reason, even though in retrospect, like Ninja Turtles was obviously a better game looking graphics wise overall, but they had and it's the only time I've ever seen it, was it Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom arcade game, and it actually talked. So every once in a while you'd be at the skating ring and you'd hear welcome. But anyway, I don't know what got my dad into it, but he started yard selling and going to flea markets. I guess flea markets were kind of still a thing. One of my first NES games was the original Castlevania game, which I got from flea market. I don't know what you would call a flea market overseas, but basically a flea market, it's kind of like a huge parking lot, or sometimes they're indoor flea markets where like everybody has like a little area and they like sell things. It's like 30 yard sales at once, or garage sales, whatever you want to call it. But my dad got really into yard selling with the neighbor, and the neighbor had, which ended up being like my best childhood friend that was unfortunately shot later in life. That's really irrelevant information, but you know, my story needs some suspense and drama. But yeah, like I first had a crush on this girl. Even at, it's weird to say you had a crush on someone when you're like 7 at this point by the time we moved. But I remember I like had a crush on her so much, and I was really shy. I couldn't look at her in the face, and she was a bit older than me, and obviously more mature, because girls mature faster than boys. And she was really sharp. She was worldly. Like, she had a fairly tough life. And yeah, basically it started out as this awkward crush where I would go and pretend I was like interested in like her toys and like her Barbies and shit like that, when I really just wanted to spend time with her. But eventually I became friends with her stepbrother, and her stepbrother had a Gameboy, which when I got to play it, it like blew my mind. Like, it had, because before that, like, you'd see Game Boys like at the store, like at kiosks, but they'd only have like Tetris hooked up to it, because that was the game that the Game Boy came with. Which to somebody that's like 7 years old, like Tetris, who gives a shit about Tetris? I want to play something that's like a console. I don't want to play a puzzle game, which I love Tetris now as an adult. But the Game Boy was something that I think was marketed to appeal to everyone. So basically I would go over to visit my crush and then see if I could go in the house and hang out with the stepbrother, which we really had nothing in common, but he had a Game Boy, and that like interests me. And I don't know how or why he had as many games as he did. Like, a lot of times when kids are growing up in broken homes, there's like a parent that's trying to make up for the lack of the other parent, or their lack of being there, so they end up like spending money or buying their kid like a bunch of games so they don't actually have to visit. I think that might have been the case, I'm not sure. But anyway, so all I could think about was the Game Boy after that. Like, so that year, and I actually have video footage of the birthday that I need to transfer to disc and maybe put it on YouTube, but that's a big to do. When my grandmother passed away, I inherited her VCR and stuff like that, but my apartment's only so big, so it's at my other grandmother's house, and I'd have to like find the footage and then have to find a way to get it onto the computer from the VCR, because I can't remember. I'm not sure if it was like one of those little cassette tapes or whatever, but I have footage of this birthday either way, and it makes me really sad. It's kind of depressing to see her name was like Tara. Like, when we were like we were best friends at that point. Like, I was like over the crush and everything, and we used to talk about everything, and it makes me sad that like we lost touch, which is actually how I found out that she passed, when I tried to get back in touch with her later on. But anyway, so that birthday, like, I couldn't sleep all night. Like, I remember waking up and there was this movie on, we didn't have cable, like, on, like, the regular network, and I remember it had something to do with Egypt, and they bust through the wall and there's all this treasure. I wish I remembered what movie it was, but I just remember images of that. And for whatever reason, my parents let me open up my birthday present early, which is extraordinarily weird for, like, our traditional birthdays or whatever. So so beside getting a Game Boy, my parents knew, like, I really loved Castlevania. I don't know if I played Castlevania 3, but I really liked Castlevania 1 and 2, and they had the Castlevania Adventure, which looked cool because of the art, but that game was terrible. I'm so happy that my mom decided to get this game. I have a feeling my mom's the one that picked it out. Like, she was kind of the listener. I think she was a stay-at-home mom during this time because I was having some issues, and I guess she needed to be present to, like, kind of help me out or whatever. I don't know. Like, anyway, I think she was working for my grandparents during this time. Like, my grandparents actually owned their unfinished furniture and collectors shop for, like, people who collect, like, they didn't sell Precious Moment dolls, but they're like snow babies that were like Precious Moment dolls. I haven't even talked about the game yet, but I remember her being home an awful lot and, like, really available because I was having issues and I was getting in trouble a lot in school, even at a young age, because I don't know, they were trying to figure out, like, what was going on. But and I don't want to get too much into that part, but anyway, so basically, this was beside Tetris, this was the first Game Boy game I ever had. And then later on, I got, like, a little light, and I just remember this being, like, I've even tried VR, but just the memories of this game is just so special. Like, during that time, like, that time was one of, even though I'm sure I'm looking at it through nostalgic rose-colored glasses and everything, like, that time, it was one of my most favorite times I've ever experienced in my life. And it sucks, like, I stayed friends with Tara until, like, high school or whatever, and then we kind of drifted away. And then after high school, that is when I tried to get in touch with her and whatever, but we were, like, super tight back then. I had, like, other friends, but I don't know, like, Tara was, like, one of those people that, like, you could talk in secondhand, and she was actually legitimately interested. And I remember the birthday gift that they gave me, there were, like, these little figures, you might remember the muscle figures. They were, like, little vinyl figures, and you could, like, squish them and you would collect them, and you'd, like, they were, like, the equivalent of, like, what you would get blind bags today. And they were Monsters in My Pocket, and I got, like, a volcano and Monsters in My Pocket. I actually did a review, one of my first reviews, like, not review, but one of my first videos of playing a game was Monsters in My Pocket on the NES. And they were, like, monster themed, so you'd get, like, little figures of Medusa and stuff like that, which was right up my alley because I was obsessed with Castlevania. But I remember later that night, like, I think my grandmother got me, like, the light and the magnifying glass, because the Game Boy, you either had to play it in daylight or whatever. And basically, like, I just remember, like, playing in the dark, and Like, it was like the most immersive experience like I had. Like, I felt like I was there. It just felt so intimate, and I can't describe it. So basically, this is your basic Castlevania game. It's really fun. It's fairly easy. I think Dracula's the hardest boss. What's unique about this Castlevania is you can select your levels, kind of like Mega Man. But it runs really well. It's the best Castlevania on the original Game Boy, and I highly recommend it. Sorry, it was story time versus talking about game times, but this game has more sentimental value than gameplay value, even though it's a good game. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you're all doing well. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
If you want to, like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.